So West Hall was one of the first projects that we were commissioned for. And the interesting brief for West Hall was that the architecture was already in construction when we received this project. And one of the challenges with this was that when they were working at architectural scale, and because it was such a quick paced project for them, it was difficult for them to kind of sift through all the details of how the space worked within before they went on and started construction for this project. And so when we received it, one of the main problems with what we got was that there were a lot of dead end areas. So as we see in the diagram on the left, like this was how the original building was intended to work. Like all the program functions were inside the large double height exhibition hall, all the hallway that connects to the side galleries. But as you can see, there's a lot of dead ends. Like once you get onto the second floor and into the gallery space, you would have to come back and all the way to the main hall before you could go to the opposite end. So one of the things we did firsthand was to create these bridges then that cross the atrium so that you reconnect the entire space into a loop. And this was something we brought in from our experience in commercial projects, is that you can't create dead end spaces for sure. And you also then have to connect it in a very clear single path journey for most of your visitors, because decisions are difficult for a lot of people. So that's what we did. And it also meant then that because we were working with the original piles and original structure of the building, we had to be very lightweight in what we added. So our method of doing that was then to create these bridges that wraps around, and then on the back end where you can see two people that are walking, those are also additional bridges. But then we didn't put in the entire floor, so you can see between the escalator and the inside the atrium wall, we have the structural weight of the additions that we did. So that was, and also because they were in such a rush for construction, that we then created these grooves on the surface of the material that we're using, so that when you get a bit of blemishes on, because it's white smooth surfaces, when you get blemishes, then this kind of negates those blemishes. And when you get like kinks in the curve, it doesn't become as apparent when you have these kind of small textures and patterns on the surfaces. So this was when they were working on site. And the third thing was when we were working with it, then we normally with curved spaces, we would work with GRP, but GRP is quite heavy in that sense. So instead, the contractor proposed something called the Okajima panel, which has a lot of I think in its contents, it has a lot of it's kind of like paper mache. So it's lighter than GRP, and it's also much more malleable on site. So when you have structural differences, it's not pre-molded completely, and then you bring it on site and you find, oh, maybe it doesn't match, and you have to redo it. And with this material, they can then wet the material, kind of like paper mache, and then they can reform it on site to make that go through. And that's why we needed the grooves on the surfaces in order to kind of act as foundation for those blemishes and kinks. So this kind of, you can see on the left hand side how they put those panels on. This was the in construction site. And so you can see the balcony on the second floor, and on the third floor, you already can see all the way around. This balcony here is actually hiding the escalator that then brings us to the second floor. And then with the white space, that's for the central atrium. And then when we get into gallery space, where people linger and touch, like we use the wooden material so that it's much warmer for people to be in that space. And the white space on the outside then acts as a central stage, because the main area of this building is actually a theater. and it extends outwards into the art gallery and a museum. And so we want to bring that theater experience out into the public space. So we created the central staircase so that that would act as a stage as well for the art museum. So they do a lot of openings and launches and things like that on these set of steps now. So that's quite nice as well. And then the rest of the area will then act as a balcony to look back onto that space. And then we also created this sunshade because if they were to use this as an art museum, a lot of artwork don't require direct light. They don't like direct light. So we create this sun shading system so that it would bring in indirect light while keeping the sunlight intact. So this is the detail of that coming down into our space. And then this is the top of the museum space, then connects back into the main theater and museum space. So it's a very large, very, very large complex that you can be in the interior space entirely while you go through all of the art museum and theater and such.
And like your other project, did you follow a meaningful concept like the poem and in this project as well?
For this, actually, our focus was for kind of working with the circulation of the space. The form came from trying to reconnect all of these spaces. But we found that while we were trying to connect, then the space flowed up and down and into each other. So the fluid language comes actually from that. And similarly, the computer aid came when we had to break down all the panels for construction, and also when we were working with the structure for this project as well. So, but they did say when we were talking to the client afterward, that they did say that it looked a lot like spreading wings in this area, and we did work with a lot of nature in terms of the inspiration for this project, because it's the main project is the Langfang Silk Road Cultural Exchange Center. So we actually looked at a lot of natural elements that occurs along the Silk Road when we were working on this project. So maybe that is related as well.
And from your material picking, did you have to do any sound analysis for this project? Since this is
we did. We did. Because for the beginning of this project, we actually started with the theater. Only the art museum portion was executed as we designed, and the theater was handed off to someone else. But when we were working with the theater space, this is kind of the material filtered through from when we were working with the contractor then, because they did have to pick materials that would then absorb sound really well. And the art museum didn't have as strict of a requirement. But with the Okajima panels, with the sandwiching from where the panels would be and to the structure itself, then they did sound checking in the atrium space, and the curves works really well with that as well. So.
Exactly.
So here on the left, you can see how we carved out the floor plate. So in order to reduce the structural weight, then we didn't push the floor plate all the way out to where our wings were. And so these are additional beams to support the decorative portion of that panel. So we try to minimize the addition to the floor plate as little as possible. This in construction. So passing through that really quickly. This is the side.
How are you able to deal with, there's always seems to be, in some cases, a clash between the design of the building and the art pieces? Because sometimes the design of the building tends to draw away the attention and artistry in the pieces. So how are you able to address those type of issues?
I think for our strategy was to, when working with the art museum, we tried to keep the gallery spaces as plain as possible. So this is what we're looking at is mostly the public space. So we In our idea, when we were conversing with the client as well, and also with Kafka, which is the Central Academy of Arts, which is the user of the space in the end, like they are the ones that are curating all the work that goes through. So our strategy is to build this kind of central hub, this public space that acts as kind of a cleanser, a palette cleanser for between the galleries. So in the gallery, it's minimized white walls and things like that, so that they can alter that in accordance to what the artwork needs. And then this central atrium space is then the entrance and the in-between space for the galleries. And so we use this mostly as a public space rather than the central exhibition space. But what I found is that they like to use this as a teaser. So sometimes they would put like one or two important pieces in this central atrium to tell people, oh, what's inside. So that's because then in the space, when you come out from each gallery, you would always look back onto the central atrium. So that's kind of interesting how that ended up working.
Plus, what's good about this is, yes.
Oh,
yes,
I was just saying, I think that's a very valid question, because we're, on the other hand, doing an exhibition design right now. And it's sometimes really hard to work with and over design gallery space.
Yes. True.
So we have experience on either or, and like we are users as well. So when we are working on doing the main space, we are aware that we should keep that flexibility for users.
Yeah. And what's good about this is that you have this large atrium which you can display also very large art pieces, right? Contrast to a typical exhibition space.
Yes. So this in the white doorway at the top of the stairs, the reason why that bridge is very narrow is we added that on top because this space actually is a 3-story height gallery, in contrast to all the other single-story gallery spaces. So they do have a large gallery space here, as well as this atrium space to put in larger sculptures. Yeah. Small details like this is where the staircase joins the wall. So we create this 3-dimensional piece, and then that then brings in the flat surface then into a side surface. But we were able to do this in a repetitive unit, and then use the panel to kind of join the 3-dimensional surface afterwards. So that was quite nice. And we also create this detail for the door handles because we thought. This actually kind of came from some of our restaurant projects, because we think when people enter a space, the first thing they touch is the door handle. So we had this kind of small idea where when we were doing this, the one I think 3 or 4 main spaces, then we created door handle with this kind of natural sculpted wood handle.